The podcast. My name is Cossy. Welcome back to a brand new video. This is the latest Arsenal news and transfer news as well. Lots to dive into this afternoon. It's a beautiful Sunday. Welcome back to the channel. Now, we're going to be talking about Alexander Isak. Newcastle find themselves in that situation where they have to sell before deadline, obviously. But but of course, Team News and Tick says that Arsenal are very much interested in Alexander Isak, that they don't see this deal as one that is 100% over. So we'll talk about Alexander Isak a little bit, but I think this video is about Riccardo Calafiori. According to Fabrizio Romano, we are going to know the future of Riccardo Calafiori very soon. Within a week's time, it will be decided where he's going to go. Bologna don't want to sell to Juve because they don't have a good relationship with them, especially the fact that they took their manager in Thiago Motta. So Bologna might not be looking to sell to sell to Juventus, and therefore Riccardo Calafiori might be going to another club. Now, Arsenal have also sent in an initial request about the player. Bologna are still expecting a couple of other clubs from the Premier League. Looks like they want to create a bidding war, but most importantly, they don't have a good relationship with Juventus. That is, the highlight. And of course, Arsenal sending in their initial offer as well. So we're going to be talking about Eze. We've seen a few stories that Arsenal are willing to offer a couple of players in exchange for Eberechi Eze. Those players include ESR, who wants to stay at Arsenal, and we'll talk about Jadon Sancho, the 40 million bargain that Manchester United are moving around, trying to sell to a couple of teams. They've included Arsenal. They have offered him to Chelsea. They have offered him to Tottenham as well. So, would you take Jadon Sancho at Arsenal at 40 million pounds? That is number one. I think that one is one we'll have a real discussion about. But most importantly as well, what do you think about the Alexander Isak situation? Do you think Arsenal should go and spend over 150 million on Alexander Isak? Because Fabrizio says that if they were to consider selling, it's going to be record high. So you would have to be the most expensive player we have ever seen in the Premier League. And I think the record transfer fee for a player to the Premier League or between Premier League clubs has been 120 million that was paid by Chelsea to Brighton. So Alexander Isak, 150 million. Would you take him at Arsenal or would you actually not? Let me know in the comment box below. Why? So where do we start? Let's start off with the Alexander Isak situation, because for me, it's pretty much easy. Now, Arsenal are very much interested in Alexander Isak. That much we know. I don't think that there is an Arsenal fan out there that doesn't like Isak. And I don't think that there is an outlet that has not talked about Alexander Isak joining Arsenal. I don't think there's an outlet this summer that has not talked about him. But Newcastle have made it very clear that they want to build a project around Bruno Guimaraes and around Alexander Isak. Yes, they have to sell. They have to, make some money before June the 30th expires. And today is June the 30th. So before today midnight in the UK, I think that will be, that will be, around 3 hours later. We are around 3 hours, in front of them. So that would be around 3 p.m. This time. It will be midnight in the UK. Newcastle must have made some sales, and they're already working on those deals. They have sold Yakumba Minte to Brighton for 30 million, and they're also close to agreeing a deal with with Nottingham Forest for Anderson to go to Nottingham Forest for another 30 million. So what Newcastle are trying to do for them is they're trying not to sell their best assets. They're trying to protect Steven Botman. They're trying to protect, Nick Pope. They're trying to protect Guimaraes. They're trying to protect Isak and the likes of Gordon. Now, if the worst goes to the worst, I think Newcastle are willing to cash in on Gordon, but not to cash in on Alexander Isak. They're willing to cash in on, a player like Willock. They're not willing to cash in on a player like, Bruno Guimaraes. Now, Team News Antique says that Arsenal, that he has information that Arsenal are not going to give up on Alexander Isak unless the situation is 100% sealed or decided. And I kind of feel like that is a wastage of time. I kind of feel like if Arsenal really wanted Isak, by now, he's not at the Euros, by now, we should have made a substantial offer, or we should have told Newcastle that we are going to be triggering that 150 million, asking price that you're actually setting. Arsenal don't have any thoughts. Arsenal don't have any ambitions of going for a 100 million pound signing this summer. This is according to Fabrizio Romano. Now, would I pay 100 million for Alexander Isak? The striker market is a little bit bogus. It's a little bit nonsensical. When I think about the strikers that are available, Jonathan David, Dusan Vlahovic, I mean, they're household names in terms of today's striker, striker profiles. They're household names, but they're not good enough. They're simply not good enough. Ivan Toney, Vlahovic, Solanke. They're players that you can regard and they're players that you can categorize as strikers, but they're not strikers that I could say they're good enough to play for this Arsenal side, to improve this Arsenal side. And we all know that Arsenal have been really impeccable in terms of scoring goals, in terms of creating chances, in terms of doing the good stuff on the pitch. So if we are adding a player on the forward line, that player has got to add massive quality, massive value, and I don't see many strikers that can actually do that apart from Alexander Isak. So 100 million for Alexander Isak is justifiable, but I don't see Arsenal spend it on Alexander Isak because I don't think we have striker as a position where Mikel Arteta is desperate. I think Mikel is desperate at left back for any reason that I don't understand. He is desperate for a left back. Mikel, for any reason that and we're going to talk about a left back. We're going to talk about this guy, on the thumb now because he's the player that Arsenal are looking in as the first signing, and is the player that we're looking in to go and try and sign first. So we'll talk about Riccardo Calafiori. So with Alexander Isak, there's so many things that have to happen for this deal to happen. Arsenal will have to first, change their transfer strategy this summer. Probably go for, instead of going for 200 million to spend, we go for something like 250 million to spend. Because if you're gonna bring in a left back, you bring in a midfielder, you bring in an attacker, and you bring in a new goalkeeper, roughly there you've spent around 200 million already. There's no question about that. So I don't see Isak as a player that fits into the budget of what we want to do, unless Mikel Arteta is willing to sacrifice all the other positions to go and sign Isak. Now, Team News and Tix already told us that if there was one player that Mikel Arteta would sign this summer, one player, if he had the choice to sign just one player this summer, that player would be Alexander Isak. So I would keep my eyes open on this deal, but I wouldn't get my hopes up. I wouldn't really say, wow, this is a deal that Arsenal are really going to complete. This is a deal that Arsenal are really, going to die for. No. I can see Arsenal sign a midfielder. I can see Arsenal sign an attacker that is not Isak. I can see Arsenal sign a left back. And I can see Arsenal win the Premier League next season or win the UEFA Champions League next season without Alexander Isak, right? So 150 million, you're joking. They're quoting, listen to the prices they're quoting. 200 million. And the reason that's why Newcastle are quoting that price is they want to make sure that everyone knows they are not selling. They want to make sure that the information is out there. He is not for sale. And I really don't mind if they don't want to sell him. Then it's their decision. I don't think Arsenal are desperate anyway for Alexander Isak. Now, I looked at Kai Havertz, and we're going to talk about Kai Havertz a little bit before we get into the main topic, which is Riccardo Calafiori. I looked at Kai Havertz yesterday, and I was discussing this with Glenn. Kai Havertz is a very good footballer. Now, we've got to give him his flowers. Very, very good footballer. But in terms of number 9, in terms of prolific finisher, no. If you watch the German game, they were playing Denmark one day. Denmark, yeah. Kai Havertz got 3 clear goal scoring opportunities that a player like Osimhen would score all of them. A player like I don't think Sesko scores all of them. I don't think he's clinical and I don't think he's prolific. But a player like Victor Gyökeres scores all of them. In the first half, he gets a header that he's just got to place it any side of the goalkeeper for that to be in the back of the net. He hits it straight to the goalkeeper. And we're like, okay, it's maybe it's a header, it's earlier on in the game, can improve, right? Then in the second half, he gets two very good chances, 1v1, and he buries none of them. I think Arsenal need to open their eyes. I think we need to open our eyes to the striker situation. I think Kai Havertz, in terms of the finisher, is better than Jesus. He's better than Edin Ketia, and that should be worrying for Arsenal. Only that should be worrying for us. How have we got a guy that, in terms of finishing, in terms of leading the line, Nicholas Fulkrug would be better. But that guy is the same guy that Arsenal are going to bank on next season because he's better than Gabriel Jesus. I don't want to lie. He's better than Gabriel Jesus. He's better than Edin Ketia in front of goal. We have all seen Gabriel Jesus in front of goal. It's a horror show. 1v1, Gabriel Jesus, it's a horror show. Edin Ketia, no. Like, he's got the striker instinct, he's got the striker moves, but of course, with Eddie, you would rather have Kai Havertz up top. So for me, Arsenal have got to address that situation, whether it's by working on Kai Havertz's finishing, into the new season, or by getting a number 9, which is easier. I think which is easier is working on Kai Havertz's finishing because his movement in the penalty area is undisputable. He's getting into the right areas. He's getting into the right positions. Can we work on his finishing? Can we get him to score those lazy chances that is actually missing? Like, when I look at the Musiala goal yesterday for Germany, Kai Havertz had 2 of those chances and he buried none of them. And Musiala buried the only chance he got in that game by opening his body up. I think Kai needs to start opening his body up in front of goalkeepers, in front of goal, because when you open your body up, it allows you, it gives you a bigger picture of the goal. It gives you, a wide variety of options to where to place the ball. But he loves to run straight at the goalkeeper and dink it and, loop it. It's not bad to loop, right? It's not bad to loop, but you must be good at looping. You must be messy at looping. I don't think Kai Havertz is that. So the Alexander Isak and the Havertz stories, for me, they kind of rhyme together because Isak, in 1v1s, you can ask Tottenham last season. He absolutely annihilated them. He's absolutely, absolutely sick. He's got very powerful placing, he's got very powerful finishing, and he's got pace. Kai Havertz doesn't have the pace, he doesn't have the placing, but he's got the runs and the positioning to get him in the good areas and the good position. So make of that information whatever you want. I know many of you think that I hate some Arsenal players. Surely, I don't hate Kai Havertz. Surely, I don't hate Partey. But what I'm trying to say is to open our eyes that if City have Julian Alvarez and Haaland, Arsenal cannot afford to have Edin Ketia and Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz as our sources of goals, regardless of whether Arsenal have the ability to score a lot of goals from different areas of the pitch. I know we do, but that should not be an excuse for us not to have a good goal scorer. That should not be an excuse, honestly. So I wanted to get that Isak story and that Kai Havertz reaction out of the door because I looked at him yesterday and I was like, something is missing here. Good morning, good afternoon to you, Ahmed Bayo. Hope you're doing well. Good afternoon to Kazola as well. Good afternoon to Reaper, who says we don't need Sancho. Good afternoon to everyone in the chat. Nabs, big up to you. Igwe. Glenn is not here, but of course he'll be there. He'll be here in the evening. Nabs. Igwe, good afternoon to you as well, and a couple of other people as well in the chat. Thank you so much for joining me right on this one. Now, Riccardo Calafiori. Shall we get into it? Riccardo Calafiori. Let's get into it. Now, yesterday, Fabrizio, I'm going to give you more information than this. He came out and said that for Calafiori, Arsenal made an inquiry to understand the situation of the player. I mean, it's also normal when you're looking for a left-footed player, a left-footed defender. Calafiori is one of the best available on the market now. Arsenal have been showing their interest in the situation, but at the moment, not a negotiation. There is no bid yet. There's no contact with Bologna, so it's just an inquiry to understand the situation of Calafiori, with Arsenal. So that's the first information that came out from Fabrizio. Then later on, he went onto his YouTube channel and he said that Riccardo Calafiori's future is going to be decided very very soon. Arsenal are watching that situation. Juventus looked as priorities and are looked as the front runners in this deal. But of course, a couple of other Premier League teams are expected to come in, including Manchester United as well. So with Fabrizio, the information he has, and I want us to start there because this is where we get into the facts before we get into the discussion. Fabrizio, the information he has is Bologna don't want to sell to Juventus. They don't have a good relationship with Juve because Juve poached their manager in Thiago Motta. So that kills the relationship between Bologna and Juventus, and it is actually very, very sour. Now, Thiago Motta wants Calafiori as top centre back, as top left back, regardless of who is at Juventus. The manager wants to reunite with Riccardo Calafiori. Riccardo Calafiori, importantly, wants to reunite with Thiago Motta as former manager. Bit of Lisandro Martinez, Erik Ten Hag from Ajax to Manchester United. Also important, the player has agreed a deal or personal terms with Juventus. So he's given them the green light that he would love to join them. He's given them the green light that he would love to be at Juventus next season. So this is where Arsenal, it's kind of deja vu, right? This is where we go back to Manuel Locatelli. Remember Manuel Locatelli after the Euros 2021? He moves to Juventus, but Arsenal are pushing to sign him. Arsenal made a couple of bids to sign him, but his mind and his thoughts and his decision was already made. He was going to Juventus. So should Arsenal stay or should we move on from Calafiori? So what the information we have, or the information that has been made public regarding the Arsenal side, is that Riccardo Calafiori is the concrete target for Arsenal for a left-footed centre back or left-footed defender who can play at left back and can also play, at centre back. So Calafiori, top player, top target. And if Arsenal have the chance to steal him from Juventus, you're going to see him as the first signing. When is this happening? Fabrizio says that now that Italy are out of the Euros, sadly they had a pathetic performance. But since they're out of the Euros, we're going to see this deal progress over the next 7 days, and we expect something to come out of Bologna, out of Calafiori's camp, out of Juventus's camp, and Arsenal's camp in the next 10 days to confirm bids, to confirm offers, and also to confirm the players' future as well. There is a lot to dive into when it comes to Riccardo Calafiori. The first thing is that he's taken everyone by storm. And he's one of the players that Bologna wanted to keep. And Bologna, according to Fabrizio, between January to February and March still, Bologna looked at Calafiori as a player to keep. They thought they would keep Calafiori. They thought they would keep Ndoi, the Switzerland, the Swiss guy. And then they thought they would lose Zaxi. They would sell Zaxi, but keep Calafiori and lose Dandoi. By now, Bologna are convinced Calafiori will not stay. Bologna are convinced that the most expensive export this summer might be Riccardo Calafiori. And that puts Arsenal in a very good situation because they're not going to sell him for cheap. They're not going to accept 30 million, 40 million for him. So we might be talking about a centre back that is going to cost in excess of 60 million. The Euros tax, like he's had an incredible, impeccable Euros. His first 3 games for Italy, wow. Apart from that own goal that he concedes against Spain, eventually they were going to concede anyway. Spain were too much for them. But apart from that own goal, I think he has not put a foot wrong at the Euros. And that's what Bologna are looking at. They're saying he has had a fantastic season. in the Italian Serie A. He has had a fantastic run at the Euros. So if anyone wants him, if anyone wants to sign him, we are going to sell, right? We are going to sell. And I personally think that is the right decision. That is what they're supposed to do. Sell. If you get good offers, sell. Now, is he going to end up at Arsenal? Let's discuss. The first thing I'm going to say is that at least Arsenal have shown more interest and more serious interest publicly for Riccardo Calafiori than any other player, right? So all these other players that we've talked about, it's been a little bit. Is it Arsenal interest or is it the interest of journalists? But this one we can confirm that it is Arsenal's interest. In this one, we can all agree that Arsenal as a team, Arsenal as a team, all of them agree with Edu, Mikel Arteta, and the coaches and whoever is concerned with this deal. All of them can agree that Riccardo Calafiori is the player they want. And this is a deal they're willing to explore. This is a deal they're willing to work on first before they get into other deals, before they get into other areas. Arsenal's chances of getting Riccardo Calafiori stand at 30%. I'm not going to lie. They stand at 30% because I cannot even say that if Juventus don't get him, he straight away falls into the hands of Arsenal, right? Because that's what most people think. Most people think that if a player like Nico Williams doesn't go to Barcelona, then Arsenal will get him. If a player like Šeško doesn't stay at Leipzig, then Arsenal will get him. If a player like Calafiori doesn't go to Juve, then Arsenal will get him. It does not necessarily mean that. There's so many clubs that are interested in him, and he could easily choose a club where he thinks he's going to play more football and is going to be more important. Now, at Arsenal, is he going to be more important? Yes, I think he's going to be. Will he play every single game? There is a possibility that he will, right? But there's so many center backs and there's so many players that can play in that position at Arsenal, and that might cause a bit of concern in the players in the player's mind, and therefore he might decide, yes, Arsenal are good. They're offering me, a good offer, but I would rather be at Newcastle. I'd rather be at Liverpool because I think Liverpool need him more than Arsenal do. So it is not straightforward. So I'm going to place our chances of getting him at 30%, and I have a pen and I have a calculator as well. What am I using to say that our chances are just 30%? One, Juventus. Right? Juventus have already agreed personal terms with the player. Juventus have already signed the player's former manager in Thiago Motta. When you think about those two, when you just think about those two points, they place Juventus above Arsenal miles, like really ahead of Arsenal by miles, by far. So Juventus stand at like 45% a chance of getting him. And the reason that's why they stand at 45, I hope I've not really had this microphone. The reason that's why they stand at 45 is Bologna don't want to sell to them. So that is the only reason why their chances are not higher than 45. If Bologna were willing to sell to them, if Bologna were willing to, do business with them, then their chances are even higher than that. Their chances are, probably 65, 70%, right? But because the club that is willing to sell doesn't want to sell to Juve, which I think also in the end they'll sell to Juventus. I don't want to lie. Then Juventus's chances at the moment are not as high. So let's say Juventus at 45. Why Arsenal's chances are 30%? It's because of our project, it's because of the manager, but also it's because of the clear role that Arsenal have created for Calafiori. Calafiori knows that if he joins Arsenal, there is already a project, there is already a role for him, and there are already structures that have been built for him to thrive and for him to succeed in that role. So we have seen him run through and bust through the midfield for Italy at the Euros. And while he was doing that, he was combining with Barella He was combining with Jorginho, and was combining with the likes of Zaccagni and the likes of Fagioli and a couple of others. When he comes into Arsenal, he can make the same runs, he can bust into the midfield with the same runs, with the security of Declan Rice, with the quality of Odegaard around him, and with the quality of players like Jorginho, and of course Havertz is an option. So I think he can see himself thrive and succeed in our Arsenal. But Juventus, for any club, for any player that is Italian, Juventus, Inter Milan, and AC Milan are dream moves. The way you see English players dying to play for Man United, Chelsea, and Arsenal. For any Italian, for any German would love to play for Bayern. Any Spanish player would love to play for Barca and Real Madrid, and any Italian player would love to play for Juventus, Roma, AC Milan, and Inter Milan. So I don't blame Riccardo Calafiori for placing Juve above us, despite the fact that Juve are not even in an attractive position. They're just rebuilding. They're just getting a few pieces of the puzzle together. They have not been the high-quality team they were around 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. But he's still giving them priority. So Arsenal stand at 30%. I still think that if he doesn't go to Juve, Arsenal will face stiff competition from Tottenham, Man United, and Liverpool. Because Fabrizio says that all those teams are what they're looking at. They're looking at introducing, or they're sorry about that. They're looking at signing a new left-footed defender that is actually talented and quality. That's what Fabrizio says. So Calafiori could be Arsenal's first deal if we beat Juventus. The chances of us beating Juve are very slim. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would I say are Arsenal's chances of beating Juventus to sign Riccardo Calafiori? Like 3 out of 10. Right? And I know many of you are going to say, well, Cossy, look, we are better than Juve. We have had 2 good seasons, better than Juventus. I know, but they're still Juventus. That's the thing. Madrid will always be Madrid. Juventus will always be Juventus. Paris Saint-Germain will always be Paris Saint-Germain. Arsenal will always be Arsenal. If a player wants to go to Arsenal, even if you're Real Madrid, you will not get him. If a player wants to play for Arsenal, even if you're Man City, you'll not get him. But if a player wants to play for Juve, Locatelli, Vlahovic, Fagioli, who else? Calafiori. If they want to play for Juve, even if you're Arsenal, you will not stop them. So Riccardo Calafiori, interesting conversation, of course, around him. But I'll keep you posted with whatever is going to be coming out of that. That. Now, someone says we need Eberechi Eze. Okay. And we're going to have quite a conversation on Eberechi Eze. So according to Team News and Tick Still, everyone at Arsenal loves Eberechi Eze. Crystal Palace want a big chunk of his 60 million paid up front, which Tottenham are reluctant to pay. Arsenal could get Palace to budge by offering players like Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson, or Edin Ketia to get a deal done. Now, Eberechi Eze is a player I really like. I really, really like him. And 60 million, that is a fair price, isn't it? It's a fair price for Eberechi Eze. Like, when you think about English players of that talent, I think Palace would be asking for 70 million, 80 million, around there. But I think 60 million is fair, despite the fact that they want 50 million of that to be paid up front, which is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of them trying to keep him for one more season. Now they've lost Olise to Bayern. But I would say, regardless of what happens, Eberechi Eze is a top player. And I'm still going to say this. He is good, but there is a bit of hype around him that I don't like. I want a player to be as good and as appreciated as Martin Odegaard. Odegaard is good. There is nothing about, Martin Odegaard. There's nothing from the English media hyping Martin Odegaard. He's good and he's appreciated because he's good. That is what I want. With Eberechi Eze, there's some parts of his game that have been pulled and exaggerated by the media. And I'm not trying to say he's not good. I'm not trying to say he's overrated. I'm trying to say there's some assets of his game, like his creativity, that have been really overstretched by the media. I don't like that. But I would take him to Arsenal, and I think Arsenal need him. Now, where do we start? Right? Where do we start? Let's start off with let's start off with the deal itself, right? Let's start off with the players involved, and then we get into why Eberechi Eze, for me, could be important for Arsenal, but I wouldn't take him over Emil Smith Rowe. Let's start off with the swap deals. So Arsenal could get Crystal Palace to relax on the asking price by offering players. We know that Palace have been like, how should I call it? They have been secret admirers, stalkers of Eddie Nketiah. They love Eddie Nketiah. They are in love with Eddie Nketiah. They would love to partner up with Eddie Nketiah for a long time. So, and I can also see Eddie Nketiah end up at a club like Crystal Palace. With all honesty, I can see Eddie end up at Crystal Palace. So the idea of Arsenal adding players in that deal, probably adding Eddie Nketiah to the Eberechi Eze deal, that would be fantastic. Adding Reece Nelson to the Eberechi Eze deal, that would be marvelous. That would be fantastic, right? What is not fantastic is adding Emil Smith Rowe. I'm going to explain. Don't add Emil Smith Rowe to the Eberechi Eze deal. Do not dare add Emil Smith Rowe to the Eberechi Eze deal. And the good thing is that the player Emil Smith Rowe wants to stay at Arsenal, and that is something we're going to talk about. Again, for me, I wouldn't swap the two. I have my reasons, but I wouldn't swap the two. Now, a swap deal for Eberechi Eze, yes, I agree. If we give them Reece Nelson, if they can see him as a perfect replacement or one of the players that come in to replace Michael Olise, no problem. Give them Reece Nelson. We are valuing him at around 20 million, and we can give them 20 million upfront. That's 40 million, and we can give them 20 million later in installments. That's a good deal, right? So I'll take Eze in a deal that involves Reece Nelson crossing over to the other side and Arsenal adding a bit of money. I don't have a problem with that. I can take Eze, and I will take Eze in a deal that sees Nketiah cross over to the other side and Eze crossing over to this side. How much will I be willing to add to Eddie Nketiah for Eze? Now, for me, I value them. I wouldn't say that they're valued at the same price, but because of the striker market and strikers are not readily available for clubs like Crystal Palace, I mean, you can't rely on Mateta, despite the fact that he has good celebrations and he kind of bosses around when he scores. Rarely scores, of course. Sorry about that. I would say Eddie Nketiah plus 15 million for Eze, or Eddie Nketiah plus 20 million for Eze. That's what I would do. The problem with these deals is that Crystal Palace will not agree to these deals. That's the truth. Why would they agree to get 10 million plus Nketiah if they can get their clean 60 million, 50 million, and they go and scout a very good young striker in the CONMEBOL, in America, in South America, at CONCACAF, and bring him in at 10 million? Why would they, want to get 10 million with Eddie Nketiah if they can get the 50 million and spend that 50 million on 3 or 2 good players? So that's the problem. I don't see Palace agree to such a deal unless they're the ones that are initiating it. Unless they're the ones that are saying, give us Eddie Nketiah, add us 20 million or 25 million, and then we'll give you Eberechi Eze. Now, Tottenham are a side that I see as one that will sign Eze. Yeah, Tottenham are a side that I see that, that will sign Eze. Eze loves Arsenal, like he really, really does. And he's already said that playing for Arsenal, that would be a dream come true. So he loves Arsenal. But it's not an easy deal to do. And although Tottenham are reluctant to pay, we know they have the money. They sold Harry Kane for a big chunk, and they have the money to invest. They have the money to buy Eberechi Eze. Should Arsenal really invest money, like apart from the swap deals? Should Arsenal invest 60 million in Eberechi Eze? That would mean that a player like Fabio Vieira would have to leave. That is where I disagree. That is where I disagree. And this is it. So the role of a player like Eberechi Eze would be overcoming mid blocks for Arsenal. One thing we struggled with, and I don't have the graphics to show you, but one thing Arsenal struggled with last season was overcoming mid blocks. And Mikel Arteta, in games that we lost and games that we dropped points, the teams that made it difficult for Arsenal were teams that were playing a mid block. We are talking Aston Villa. We are talking Chelsea at the Stamford Bridge. We are talking Bayern Munich, home and away. We are talking we are talking Fulham. They're teams that played a mid block, and Arsenal have been really struggling all season with a mid block. So if you don't know what a mid block is when a team seeks to kind of play a low block, but not deep in their own half. So they literally play kind of a low block. They park the bus. That's the word I'm looking for. They park the bus in the middle of the park, right? They park the bus in the middle of the park. They leave a lot of space between their last line of defense and their goalkeeper. That is very different when you compare it to a club like Brentford, who park the bus at the edge of their penalty area. So if you remember what Unai Emery did with against Arsenal, they were parking the bus, but they were parking the bus in the middle of the field. Even Bayern, they were parking the bus in the middle of the field, and that's why if you remember, the key players for Bayern against Arsenal. Try to remember the key players for Bayern against Arsenal: Kimmich, who was inverting into that midfield, Konrad Laimer, and Leon Goretzka. Are we surprised? No, we are not. Why? Because the same strategy was applied by Chelsea's Pochettino at the Stamford Bridge, and Arsenal really struggled. The game ended 2-2, but we could have lost that game because we were 2-0, 2-0 down at some point. The same tactics brought by Aston Villa under Unai Emery, home and away. So, of course, Arsenal did miss chances in some of those games. So the problem with Arsenal and why we don't deal with mid blocks very well is we don't have solutions, or we have not decided to go for solutions around mid blocks. And that could be a big problem for Arsenal next season, as teams have actually figured out how you play against Arsenal. But there is a way Arsenal could actually overcome a mid block. Number one, we struggled against mid blocks last season because we were not brave enough. You look at players like Declan Rice. Declan Rice has got a lot of ability on the ball, but he's just not brave enough. He's not brave enough to just dribble through the mid block, because that is one thing you can do. You can, if you have a player like Messi, if a player like who's one of the best, Hazard, right? Hazard, one of the best dribblers, or Santi Cazorla. Let's use Santi Cazorla because Cazorla played for Arsenal. So if a player like Santi Cazorla, what he does is, despite the fact that the team is parking the bus in midfield, he gets the ball and he carries it through them. Like, Cazorla doesn't care. He just, carries the ball through them. One player that can be Cazorla is ESR. One player that can be Cazorla is Eberechi Eze. So with Eze, if you've seen him for Palace, he doesn't care. Again, he's another player who doesn't care. He's so confident that whether you're Man City, whether you're Arsenal, whether you're Man United, doesn't care. He picks up the ball and runs at you. He runs at players. He runs through the midfield. He runs at you. That's why I think Eze would actually be a very good signing, especially when Arsenal face the mid block. But why I wouldn't swap him, why I wouldn't swap ESR for Eze is this. ESR is a good ball carrier. We can't forget that. He's a good ball carrier, confident player, and he can carry the ball through the mid block. The other reason why I wouldn't take Eze over Fabio Vieira, half space crosses. Now at Arsenal, we have two players that can play that Kevin De Bruyne cross. You know those crosses that you're in the middle of the midfield, and then you cross it in. Kevin De Bruyne does that a lot. If you want to get a good example of that, Martin Odegaard's assist for Kai Havertz against Chelsea. Kind of those. But I think Yuri Tillemans is the master of those balls. He's sitting at the best of the midfield and just crosses it. He's in those left hand, left side or right side half spaces, and he just crosses it, whips it in. So with Fabio Vieira, he's the best player at Arsenal to do those half crosses, half space crosses. And that's why I wouldn't swap him for Eze. I would be happy to have Eze, ESR, and Fabio Vieira, but I wouldn't trade any one of them. I wouldn't trade anyone of Vieira and ESR for Eze. But that is the role Eze would play at Arsenal, and we'll do a video about him. Don't worry. Now, ESR wants to stay. Important update there. For me, ESR staying at Arsenal should be paramount. It should be our first priority. Our first priority at Arsenal should not be looking to move him on. Our first priority at Arsenal should be looking to keep him. He's a quality player, shirt number 10, and he's got a role to play. Mikel has got to find a way of getting him into the team. So as a player, he wants to stay, wants to keep his position at Arsenal. It's going to be very interesting to see whether Arsenal will keep him, because sources are saying that Arsenal are even willing to subsidize the price they're asking for to about 30 million, even 25 million. And this is coming in from an Aston Villa source. Villa really like Emil Smith-Rowe, right? So they're saying that Emil Smith-Rowe is set to inform Arsenal that he wants to leave the club amid his interest from multiple Premier League clubs, including Aston Villa. But also an update later on confirmed that Emil Smith-Rowe wants to stay at Arsenal. So for me, if he wants to go, then I would let him go. But if he wants to stay, if he dare informs the club that he wants to stay, I would keep him. Like I said, I don't think his role at Arsenal is gone. I don't think his role at Arsenal is over. There are people who tell me Arsenal have moved past Emil Smith-Rowe. We've not. Have we won any titles to say that we've moved past Emil Smith-Rowe? We've none. We cannot even figure out how to bypass a mid-block. And he's the best ball carrier in the team. So, if you cannot bypass a mid-block, and you need Emil Smith-Rowe to bypass a mid-block, there is no way you have evolved past him. So, ESR, if he wants to stay, I would keep. But I would also add Eze to that team. Okay. We're going to have this conversation, guys. We're going to have this conversation. Because at some point in time, it was always going to come up. Arsenal have been offered Jadon Sancho by Manchester United representatives this summer as they seek to offload the winger at 40 million. Reports Team Talk. Gunners, would you take Jadon Sancho at Arsenal? Jadon Sancho, would you take him at Arsenal? 40 million? Attractive price, isn't it? And of course, the Jadon Sancho at Dortmund is different from the Jadon Sancho at Man United. But I want your thoughts there. I want your thoughts in the comment box below. Would you take the revived Jadon Sancho, or would you actually just stay away from him as a deal? Like, would you just stay away from such a deal? Let me know, because all your comments on Sancho, all your comments on the topics, gonna be running them through the next 10 minutes. Frederick says, thank you for the updates following from Kenya. Thank you so much. Moses says, instead of Eze, let's keep Emil Smith-Rowe. That's what I'm saying. If you're giving me I'll take. If you want us to swap one for the other, no. I wouldn't swap Eze for Isar. Emma says he can't take Jadon Sancho. Nice. Kind of talking to Sancho. I want your opinions into Sancho. Says so Emma says he can take him. How many of you would take Jadon Sancho at Arsenal? Let me know. Moses says, please, we need Williams, not Eze. Now, I want to correct this misconception. I have seen outlets reporting that Arsenal want Eze as a left winger, as a winger. Despite his versatility, they don't want him as a winger. No. They don't want him as a winger. Regardless of his versatility, despite his versatility, Arsenal don't want to sign Eberechi Eze as a winger. Actually, Eze would be a player that would come in to provide cover and provide competition and provide depth in that Martin Odegaard role. And also the Declan Rice role. He would come in as a cover for 8, cover for the 10, right? Play a couple of games in the Champions League where Arsenal have already progressed through. Not as a winger. So Arsenal can get Williams and Arsenal can get Eze. So he's not coming in as an alternative to Williams. No, he's not. He's not. Gennaro says no Sancho, not to Sancho, but you take Williams. Okay. Hussein says Arsenal need Gyökeres, Nico Williams, and Calafiori, and probably Bruno Guimaraes. Big up to you, Hussein. Okay. This is this one who says we are linked with a bunch of players. I think the positions that Arsenal want are very clear. I think the positions that we want are very clear. I don't think Arsenal have any doubts, and I don't think I've reported any doubts in what Arsenal want. No. Right? And someone just called us next season FC Tommy. Well, I mean, until we win the trophy, right? It's going to be about Arsenal trying to do it next season. So, regardless of how you feel, at the moment, we still have to believe that next season is our season. Hey, Cossy, watching live from Kenya. I would take Sancho only if we miss out on Williams. Okay. I mean, he's also cheaper, but his wages will be a problem. Moses says we can go all out for Williams. We need him. I think with Williams, the problem is going to be his wages. He wants 250,000 and above in terms of wages. Mike Mira says we need Calafiori if there is a chance to sign him. And then he says Gabriel Magalhaes made some silly mistakes last season, like in a game like against Bayern. I wouldn't drop Gabriel, but I would play Calafiori at left back. So I wouldn't necessarily say sign Calafiori to replace Gabriel. I wouldn't be that harsh, but I understand why you are that harsh, right? Okay. Yusuf says, what kind of transfers? Are you trying to say what kind of transfers do Arsenal need? What kind of transfers do Arsenal need? I think I've done videos about what kind of transfers we need. But for me, if Arsenal can get Kimmich in midfield, and we can get a left-sided defender, can be Magehi, can be Calafiori, can be Jora, I think that would be perfect. And then up top, we get a striker. At the beginning of this video, I just said Arsenal need a striker. I'm not going to change my mind about that. Do we have a proper backup for our captain? That's according to Lonuke. Do we have a proper backup for Martin Odegaard? We don't. But still, Odegaard is a very difficult player to back up. He's like he's like a Mesut Ozil. They're very difficult players to back up because what they do, they almost do alone. So Odegaard is not Declan Rice, because with Declan Rice, despite the fact that he's so formidable, if I have Partey and Jorginho in the same midfield, we can roll. If I have Emil Smith Rowe in that role, we can roll. But with Odegaard, it's very hard to find a player who can actually give you the same level of quality. Elias says Williams is a good deal. Following you from Kenya, it's a good deal, but the wages are insane. The wages are insane, right? The wages are insane. The wages are insane. Kamu, I think Yusuf. Is this Yusuf? Let's see. Yeah, Yusuf. Says Arsenal will end up with nothing. Why? In the last 5 transfer windows, right? Let's not say 5. Let's say in the last 3 transfer windows where Arsenal have been meaning business. When did we end up with nothing? Like, I want us to say last summer Arsenal wanted a midfielder and we didn't get a midfielder. Arsenal wanted a defender and we didn't get a defender. Arsenal wanted someone to join the attack and we didn't get someone to join the attack. Last summer, Arsenal spent 200 million. The summer before that, Arsenal had spent close to 200, actually in excess of 200 million. And the summer before that, Arsenal had spent close to 100 million. So if you're saying Arsenal will end up with nothing, then I think you're following the wrong club. I think Arsenal massively improved as a club. Sad says, what are these guys in scouting team planning? We are not seeing anything. It is not the guys in the scouting team that actually signed the players. Yeah, just a bit of information. Emma says, how do you see Sancho in your own opinion, Cossy? Okay, let's get there. Isak says Sudakov looks good, plus Rice, plus Odegaard would be a good midfield. I do like Sudakov. But I don't think that is the kind of profile Mikel Arteta is looking at still. I think we have already seen what Mikel wants basing on the targets. Now, how do I see Jadon Sancho? There are 2 versions of Jadon Sancho. A happy Jadon Sancho and a depressed Jadon Sancho. The happy Jadon Sancho is at Borussia Dortmund, and the depressed Jadon Sancho we have seen at Man United. If you're giving me the Jadon Sancho at Manchester United, no, please, thank you. If you're giving me the Jadon Sancho at Dortmund, yes, please, thank you. I'll check him. My problem with Sancho is defensively. He's got to add a shift in his defensive game. He's got to add something, right, in his defensive game. Otherwise, that is not a player I have problems with. That is a player I can bring in at 40 million to compete with Saka, to give us squad depth, and he will do it very, very well. Who is this guy, Calafiori? Calafiori is 22-year-old centre-back for Bologna, one of the best talents at left centre-back and left-back now in the world. Mike says, Nico Williams is a must signing to back up Saka, or if not, then Bakayoko. Then in number 6, then the rest we can fix later when we start the season. Happy Sunday, Sagan. Happy Sunday to you. Hope you're doing actually very well. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this one. It's been quite interesting to talk to you. And yeah, we'll be talking later on. We have a live stream with Glenn. If we have something breaking, then I'll come live. In July, we'll do a couple of live streams, many live streams, especially with the breaking stories that are expected. And of course, I'm going to do a live stream. Let's see, this is 2 p.m. So I'll do a live stream at 5 or 6, 5. So I'm live at 5, right? I'm live at 5 to discuss July, right? Arsenal, what should we be doing in July and what we expect in July? What are some of the deals that could break in July? So live at 5, make sure you're there. See you soon.